Well, good afternoon or morning, wherever you may be. It is noon here in Atlanta, Georgia, live on Facebook and YouTube. I want to encourage everybody, if you want to, go over to youtube.com/ScottDavisTV. Very easy, ScottDavisTV, and subscribe there and click the little bell, and that will let you know that I am live. When I come on, I'm going to put these down here, these little comments. So put that right there. Hey, Amy. Got a lot of folks signing on, so I'm glad you're here today. We've got a full show to go about an hour. So I'm letting you know it'll be about an hour. I got a great interview with my pastor, Dr. Tim Dowdy. It's going to be fun. And but I want to get right into something. I want to share a scripture that my wife and I read the other day. Let me see if I can bring this up here, because I want to bring this picture up. If I can drop it in here. Can y'all see that? Isaiah 48:10b. That's the second half of the verse. I have refined you in the furnace of suffering. God says, I have refined you in the furnace of suffering. This can feel like a furnace of suffering, that is for sure, the time we're going through. And I just thought that was a great thing. So, hey, Beth, it's good to see you. As always. So that's fun. So I'm going to get right into a couple of things. First of all, I want to say, before we get into the full show, Pastor Tim's got some great stories that we're going to talk about today. He has been pastor at my church for 30-something years and is leaving and going to a new ministry, working for the state of Georgia and helping churches in their church wellness. And he's got some funny stories, so stick around for that. But I wanted to say right at the top of the show, Mother's Day is Sunday. Some churches are starting to meet already. There's a church not far from me, McDonough, Georgia. Not the church I go to, but another church, and they are meeting now in their church. They decided to take, hey, everybody that sits on the left side of the auditorium come at 10 o'clock, and everybody that sits on the right side of the auditorium come at 11 o'clock. And I thought that was kind of a cool idea. That way they wouldn't be crowded and they could spread out. And so they've already started. They started meeting last Sunday, but this Sunday is Mother's Day, and a lot of churches are still meeting by virtual internet, like this kind of thing that I'm doing here from my home. And but I wanted to say that for Mother's Day, we put together a special on my website, a Mother's Day package, and I want to bring it up right now for you. Let's see if I can get this thing to work. Here is my Mother's Day special. You get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different items. If you bought them all separately, it's $95, but we're selling it for only $70. Monday, we're taking this down. It won't be on the website anymore. It's a one-time only for special Mother's Day special. You'll get the Jesus T-shirt that my wife designed because she's a nurse, and it's got the heartbeat lines, which is a great thing. You'll get the silver cross necklace. That's heavy metal. It's not rock and roll. It's metal that's heavy. You get the 3 different cross bracelets. Those are natural stone cross bracelets. You'll get the Jesus bracelet that matches the T-shirt, plus my newest music CD called All Joking Aside, that's got 11 songs and a lot of friends singing with me on that, like Mark Lowry did a duet with me. The Nealons sang with me on I'll Fly Away. plus Babby Mason and Megan Garrett with Casting Crowns did a trio with me. Just a lot of different. Melody DeVivo is singing and playing violin on one of the songs, and Billy Lord is singing with me. We interviewed him last week, and then of course Matt Duran is on that album. Then the hymns and other classics. That's 16 songs that my mother loved. Beulah Land, Sweet Hour Prayer, Nothing But the Blood, In the Garden, those type of older songs, if you like that. And we did a few of the older contemporary songs like Friends Are Friends Forever. Those type of things are on there. It's all in black and white. That's kind of a Southern gospel upbeat song. All on that hymns and other classic. And then the Sweet Life live CD. That's an hour-long CD of music. Comedy. That's an hour-long comedy. So go over to ScottDavis.com/shop, ScottDavis.com/shop, and pick that up. It's $70. Plus, I think it's shipping's $10 for shipping, I think, because it actually cost me like $15 to ship, but I'm only charging $10 because the post office will get you, man, I'm telling you. But that will give you something for Mother's Day. Give it away, buy it for yourself, give it to your mama, whatever, but pick that up. It helps us during this time. Listen, I'm not on the road. I'm not traveling. We're not doing honorariums. We're not doing love offerings or anything. So if you believe in the show and you like this show and you want me to continue, I'm trying to do stuff to still minister to people and make a difference and have fun too and encourage people, have something different to watch than Netflix or, Amazon Video and all those type of things, Hulu and all those things. So if you like this show, one way you can support this ministry, what we're doing here, is by going over to ScottDavis.com/shop and buying that package or some other stuff. There's a lot of stuff there. You can also donate if you'd like to. Just go to ScottDavis.com/donate. That's the easiest. If you have PayPal, you can send something. I mean, even if it's $5, some people, a lot of comedians are doing things where they have comic shows online and they do like a little tip jar, which is kind of funny. And you can do a little tip thing, So you go to paypal.me/ScottDavisMinistries and leave $5 or Square Cash if you have that app. Right there's Scott M. Davis. That's fine. Or Venmo. That's for the millennials out there that know Venmo. It's at Scott-Davis-3. So if anything you can help with, that would be great. Many of you have already supported. Many of you have already sent in money and given and sent checks and things. We are thankful for that. Really thankful. Now, check that out. If you feel led to give, great. If you can't, don't. That's all I'm saying. But I want to get right into the funny pictures of the day. Photos that either I have taken or seen that make me laugh. There I am in the corner, so you can still have my reaction. So here's some funny photos. Let me bring this one up. I thought this was cool. How do you redo the car? That's what I'm thinking. That's what it is. You see that on everything. I will design stuff, and you have that little symbol that says redo. I want to redo this whole car. Sometimes I feel that way. So I thought that was kind of a unique observation. Maybe not. That was funnier in my head when I first saw it. And then this one, this is a perfect barcode for toilet paper. Perfect. Isn't that cool? I thought that was great. Perfect barcode for toilet paper. And then we have, what is this one? Okay, this just ain't right. This is a dad somewhere who made a mask out of his shirt. Okay, I could do that. But believe me, you don't want to see my stomach like that. I eat too much. I had an innie till I ate so much it became an outie. But so you don't want me looking like that. But I thought that was interesting. And then here, this is a rutabaga. I think that's a rutabaga. But it looks like he's been licking frogs or something. Isn't that funny? Look at that. That is a weird looking vegetable. I don't want to eat that. That's nasty. Let's see what else we got. This is my last one for today because I'm keeping this short because we got a good interview. This is kind of how my day's been going. Have you ever had days like this? It's like, this is my day. Page 4 of 2. It's like nothing's going right. Oh, my goodness. And that's kind of the way it will feel during this season of Corona. That's what I'm saying. But I hope everybody's doing good. Let me see who's here. There's Nathan said, good word. Nathan Skipper. Good to see you, Nathan. Hope you're doing good. And let's see who else is on here. Marty Youngblood. Prayers, brother. Thank you so much. Denise Carmichael. I love this. She's kin to me, kind of. Denise is, well, kind of kin. It's my, let's see, brother's wife's wife or something like that. But anyway, Denise is fun. I don't know how you call that. And then Greg Youngblood finally got it pulled up. I'm glad you got that going. And Tommy Childers Young. Tommy is up in Pennsylvania. Cold up there. I don't know if y'all still having snow up there or not. And then Ben Dempsey is with us. Get after it, buddy. Thank you. All right, so this is fun. And brothers and sisters-in-law. There you go, Denise. Thank you for clarifying that. My brother's sister-in-law. So we're kind of kin. But I want to get right into an interview. I've been doing interviews with people. I just did an interview a couple of days ago with Juan DeVivo, who is a guitar player, singer with Casting Crowns, and we actually went to his house. We did the whole show from there, so that's going to be airing next week, so be sure and tune in for that. But I interviewed my pastor of 30-something years, Dr. Tim Dowdy, at Eagles Landing First Baptist Church, and so I want to get right into that interview. Listen, you want to watch the whole thing because he's got some really good tips and also about ministry and some funny stories. It's really good. So let's get into this and check this out. Well, it is my privilege to have my pastor on the interwebs right now to talk to him for my interview this week. So I want you to put I say this it's becoming a thing, your virtual hands together for my friend and pastor, Tim Dowdy. Hey, Tim.
Hey, Scott. Hey, it's great to be with you.
Yes.
Excited about the afternoon.
And you have been my pastor for over 30 years and my friend for like 3 years. And so, no, you've been a friend since the beginning, but you're pastor of Eagles Landing First Baptist Church in McDonough, Georgia. Well, actually were up until like a week ago or so. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we're still in transition. In fact, I'm shooting this in my new office at the Georgia Baptist Mission Board, but I'm also still at the church, and will be for the next several months. After 30 years of being the pastor there, now over 30 years, we've called a new lead pastor. Trey Brinson just came from North Carolina and just started today. So we're going to work through side by side for a while, and then I'll slowly pass the baton, and he'll lead the church ministry there. But my wife and I get to stay involved in life of the church. That's what's exciting. And now my role shifts to being a mentor, a supporter, a helper of pastors across the state of Georgia.
That is
kind of a pastor to pastors ministry.
Right. That is awesome.
I'm looking forward to it. It's been interesting because the transition has happened during COVID-19. So absolutely nothing that I thought would happen has happened. It's been the craziest. You think about it. I had never heard of another church that presented a candidate to be the new pastor to an online audience. We had nobody in the auditorium. Then he preached his in view of a call sermon to no one in the auditorium except his family and a few of our staff members. And we voted and called him as our pastor through an online voting system, which was amazing, by over 98% vote. And then Sunday was his first Sunday, and we're still not meeting together. So yesterday he was there, did the welcome. There's nobody in the auditorium to welcome. He's welcoming everybody online. So it's been a strange time.
Yeah, but I came that first Sunday that he was going to preach. I was one of the 20 people in the audience, and and I remember the first time you preached, and I've told this to several pastors since you said this, and they laughed. They said, "Oh, he's so right." When you're preaching it's different because you're used to preaching to a crowd. You're from a pulpit, audience, and you said at the end of the message, you said this is kind of like talking to somebody on the phone. I don't know if they're still there or not, and so which is exactly right. And you don't know if people are lit, and it is a different dynamic. Tim, I remember when we first met was back in I guess about 1990. I remember back in the day because I've been
Yeah.
doing ministry and singing and concerts and stuff for years. I started as a singer, obviously, and went to Liberty doing music, and then I started talking, and people said, "Ooh, talk more." So I don't know how to take that when it comes to music, but I don't sing as much as I used to do. But back in the day, I did a lot of
Yeah.
revivals and things like that, and I sent out these little cassette tapes to churches, and you guys responded. And Bill Curtis was the worship pastor, I
Yep.
guess called the music minister back then of Eagles Landing Church. And I think it was 1990, and you guys were going to have like outdoor revival, like an old tent revival with the sawdust. And I remember because I think you were shooting for like, this is when it first got going, you were shooting for like 100 people. And I think you did. You hit that goal. And I remember that was the first time I met you. Of course, I met Bill Curtis first, and I met you. And you were, I think you're a year older than I am, probably, and because I'm 50.
I'm 32. I don't.
That's right. Well, I don't 28 then, okay. But if you're 32, I'm 28. Let's just say that. But you're a year older, and we hit it off, and I liked your personality, and you seemed, because I've met a lot of pastors over the years that kind of put on a pastor voice and a pastor face, and they were different off stage, and you have always been the same on and off, and I like that about you. And I think that's when we first met, and I decided to join the church. But tell people, because it's changed a lot since then, 1990, but tell people about how you started at Eagles Landing.
Yeah, the church actually had started, the Association of Baptist Churches in South Metropolitan Atlanta had started the church. And it had just had a small group of people met in a house that was an associational office for a long time. And then they finally got a piece of property. They were trying to get started. They were really struggling getting things going. And my parents lived near there. And one of the guys that was in the church had actually taught a Sunday school class I was in when I was a teenager. So he just said, "Hey, if you come to see your parents this summer, would you preach one of the Sundays? Because we're trying to make it Sunday to Sunday, and we're just trying to get different guys to preach." So I did. So last Sunday of July, there was about 32 people there. Like 14 of them came with me. So it was like huge crowd, and got finished. And when I went back home, he called me up and said, "Hey, we want to talk to you about being our pastor." And I thought he was just joking with me because he was saying how much they were struggling just trying to make it. And I thought, he's just got to be joking. So I started laughing. He didn't laugh with me. So I realized quickly, this is not a joke. He's serious. And, as the Lord would have it, I went through a season of prayer and really seeking out the Lord's heart. And I was in Tennessee at the time, an older church, and God was doing some great things there. But he used Jeremiah chapter 1, where he tells Jeremiah, "Go everywhere I send you and preach whatever I command you," to give me direction to come. And my wife and I, we had done the Seeking God's Will by Yellow Pad. I don't know if you've ever done that. Reasons to go, reasons to stay.
Right, yeah.
So
got the legal pad right about pros and cons, yeah.
Yeah, so we did that, and it was far more reasons to stay than to go. But there was only 2 reasons to go. But when I got to that passage of Jeremiah chapter 1, I was just studying the call of the prophets to discern God's voice. And, man, it was like it was bigger than anything else on the page. Go everywhere I send you, preach whatever I command you. I was like, none of this makes sense. And God said, "I'm not asking it to make sense. I just want you to follow me." And so I actually got Bill Curtis. He was on our staff at the time. We got in the car the next morning after that passage had been brought to my attention. I said, "I just need to get out of town, clear my head." We drove down to Dalton, Georgia to Doug Gap Baptist Church. I mean, I don't know about in other states. I know in Georgia we've got some great names of churches.
Oh, yeah.
Doug Gap Baptist Church.
It's like I passed one that said Halfway Baptist. They weren't going to be all the way. There's a halfway. Anyway, go ahead.
So we get there a little late. The conference is already going on. And the guy says, "Hey, before we go to our breakouts, let me put a word of devotion on a transparency on an overhead projector. Tells you how long ago that was." And it was Jeremiah chapter 1 that said, "Go everywhere I send you, preach whatever I command you." And Bill looked at me and said, "You need to go because the handwriting is literally on the wall." And so God was just really obvious. We went down to McDonough. The name of the church was Koinonia Baptist Mission at the time. And we had about 30 people.
That rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, doesn't it? And everybody else's tongue too. They thought we were either a transplanted church from Hawaii or the headquarters for the Kiwanis Club. And it was a crazy crazy time. We grew from 30 to 60 from November of '89 to February of 1990. But in the process, we'd been studying the possibility of changing the name because it was so difficult. Nobody knew how to spell it. We passed out cards one Sunday. I just everybody write down the name of our church. Now, some people misspelled Baptist, but everybody, not one person spelled Koinonia correct. And so we did this good Baptist thing, appointed a name change study committee. They studied it, came back and said, we could either name it after the community, Eagles Landing. We could translate the term, call it fellowship. But the Sunday we did that in 1990, we were going to vote on that. It was really a hard day because some of the older people that had helped start the church became attached to the name. Little did I know that they were going to oppose it. And so when that morning before we'd have a vote, one of the members called me and said, hey, what time are you going to be at church? And I said, about 7:30. And he said, I'll meet you there. I knew something was going on. And when he came in and said, listen, I know exactly how this is going to turn out. You're going to vote to name the church Eagles Landing First Baptist Church. But if you do that and you allow it to go through, I'm leaving, taking my money, and the church will go bankrupt. And, it was one of those moments. I was 28 years old sitting there. Here's a guy that's, in his 70s, one of the stalwarts in this young church. And I just said, man, this isn't your church. This is not my church. It's God's church. And so, we can do whatever. We can do what you want. We do what God wants. But I know this. We do what God wants. He'll take care of his church. And so we did vote. We voted to name it Eagles Landing. And that morning, half the congregation walked out. Now, the crazy thing about this, the Friday before that, we closed on our house. Saturday, we moved in our house. Sunday morning, we split the church. Sunday night, we're sitting in our living room. We have no furniture there. I remember just sitting there with my wife, and I said, well, let's enjoy the house for a month because I know that's how long we have it. I don't know what we're going to do if we're going to be able to pay for it after that.
Right.
But God obviously provided.
Obviously, because the church,
yeah.
That's funny because you, in our new members class, you will tell the story and you say, we took a church of, 35 or so, and first thing I did is run it down to 15 or whatever, which is great.
Yeah.
Kind of start over. But it has grown over the years because that's been 30 something years ago. And, and a lot of things change. And one thing I love about what you have always said, because I've seen it grow, but it would grow and then go down. It was always an upward thing, but it would have its ups and downs, and it would grow and fall down. And every time that fell down, you always came in and said, you know what, wherever Jesus leads, we'll follow. And I remember you saying those down times, you could kind of, staff would come in and say, look, we're not following Jesus on this, where he's leading. And you could kind of pinpoint those things and say, and of course, cultures change and communities change and all that kind of stuff. I know there's a difference between membership and actual attendance.
Oh, yeah.
So membership, I looked up our church, I don't know, probably a year ago, and it said something like 6,000 members or something like that.
Yeah.
And
probably a lot of those, I mean, we've accumulated members over the years, and sometimes they stay in the area, sometimes they move and transition to other places, don't tell us. We don't find out they're going somewhere else or involved somewhere else, and they're still in our role. So, I mean, on average Sunday, we'll have 1,500 to 1,800 people at 2 campuses in 3 services. That number's a little different.
Right.
But we've had higher times where our attendance was even more than that per week. It's interesting. There's been a couple of changes that are taking place, I think, in the whole world, and there's used to, we had a large number of people that were there, probably 3 or 4 out of 4 Sundays in a month. And now we still have some of those people. That number is a lot smaller.
Right. And
the average person comes a couple of times a month.
Right.
And so it takes a lot more people just to have that average attendance.
And of course, cultures change and ethnicity changes as well, the whole community. Kind of address some of that, because I know we face that at our church.
Yeah. Oh, yes. One of the most exciting things about I'd probably say the last 15 years at Eagles Landing is our community has transitioned over and over again. As Metro Atlanta continued to grow and our community became part of the Atlanta Metroplex, the metropolitan Atlanta community. And because of the popularity of the airport and its international impact, I mean, our community has had people from all over the world move here, which it's hard for me to even imagine how someone from Uganda finds McDonough, Georgia, and says, I'm going to move there. But they do. And now in our church, we have people from 34 different countries that are a part of our church family, which is phenomenal. I think there's like 23 or 24 different languages that people as their first language other than English in our church, which is incredible. It's awesome to think from our little place in McDonough, Georgia, we're really reaching the nations of the world, and without even leaving our community, which is kind of cool.
And during this whole coronavirus situation, tell a little bit about how that has changed when it comes to the online thing. Because even though you're looking at an empty auditorium, you've really reached a lot of people through technology.
Oh, absolutely. It probably far exceeded our expectations when we had to move to online. Really, to be honest with you, I think we got the news on like a Wednesday or Thursday that we really needed to go to online. They didn't want any people, in the auditorium because of social distancing and protections. And so we shifted late in the week. I think I sent out a video Friday, and then by Friday afternoon, I needed to update it Saturday. And poor Eric Jackson was up there every time I needed to be up there to make a video so we could send it out and get people updated. And then when we shot it, we were really just hoping to reach our people in our own community, and they're part of our church family, and some of those that had already joined us online. But it really blew up and expanded, and a lot of churches saw that, where the reach and expanse was great. I think the last time I looked, and I think it's expanded this past week, but it was like 16 different countries. People from 16 different countries around the world were watching our services live. And then others were watching them on demand later, because of the time difference and all that. So that was really phenomenal. Just amazing, amazing response.
And thousands of people. Gosh. Much more than. Yeah. And I have talked to a few churches that run, 100 people or 200 people or 300, and they notice that. So it'd be 1,500 people that are watching their online stuff. It is a great thing. Listen, we're all learning new skills and ways of reaching people, which is awesome during this time. However, you got to be very careful, because I saw on one of the groups in Facebook or somewhere they were talking about the Zoom meetings and had everybody, and they said, well, why don't we just sell our church building and do this every week? And it's like, no. You got to be careful, because Hebrews talks about, hey, we don't want to neglect meeting together as a people. This is a good addition to, but I think we need to keep in mind, I'm ready to get back to church. Is all I'm saying.
My goodness. Things like this, like we're doing right now, these are wonderful inventions of man that give us the ability to communicate with one another in different ways, in new inventive ways. But as the saying goes, there's nothing like being there. And even when you start thinking about how in Scripture God describes biblical community and what's involved in that, I mean, it takes physical presence. I mean, it takes connection. I mean, real, genuine connection to people. And my prayer through this whole thing for the church has been that we would not come out of this the same way we went in. And I'm not meaning in a bad way, that we're coming out worse. I hope we come out better. I hope we come out on the other side realizing what a gift God has given us in a biblical community, in a local church. And we have a hunger to invest ourselves in the lives of people personally and engage with people in a greater way, because I think we've gotten a little lethargic and took for granted what we had been given. And now it's been gone. And I think at first it was real novel to, sit in your pajamas, sit on the couch, eat popcorn, have the, dishwasher going, clothes are in the dryer, and kids are playing, and you're watching the service, and hey, there's no accountability, there's no responsibility. This is really good. I didn't have to get up early, didn't even have to get ready. I'm still in my pajamas, and but after a while, I think we've seen this. I think in talking to people, you see that that's wearing thin. That's not the real world. It's kind of like Mark Hill says about concerts. He talks about a concert and how powerful it is and moving. He said, but it's not the real world. Nobody lives a concert. That's not real life. Real life's in the local church, the exchange of everyday life among believers, encouraging one another in our walk with Jesus, and being the body of Christ, the hands and feet of Christ, to serve one another. It's hard to do that just online on a Zoom call or on a live service or a recorded service.
Right, and and you don't realize you don't miss it until it's gone. And now we miss it. And I miss
Ooh.
that interaction,
Oh
that
man.
human touch. I don't care what Dr. Fauci says. I'm going to keep shaking hands and hugging people.
Well,
and,
we've been giving a lot of fist bumps, elbow bumps,
right.
All that kind of stuff. So it's just,
well, next time I see you, I'm giving you a bear hug. So that's all I'm saying. If I have the corona, I'll just really hug the people I don't like, maybe kiss them in the mouth, the people I really hate. But no, I'm thankful that we do have the technology to stay in touch like this. And you've been ahead of the game, which is great because our church is larger. We have some churches that I talk to that we don't have anything to do this. I said, take your iPhone out. Good grief. And just sit on give a message, give a Bible study, give something. Now that you've taken this new position, of course, tell us a little bit about Trey. That's the new guy that's coming in. And that's different because a lot of folks, pastors stand up and say, I'm out of here, and you never see him again, and a new guy comes 6 months later. Tell how this transition, you're doing it a little bit differently than a lot of churches.
Yeah, when God started stirring in my heart about this ministry and started talking to the guys here at the Georgia Baptist Mission Board about this the area they wanted to develop called pastoral wellness. So whether it's physical health, emotional health, spiritual health, vocational health, financial health, that we're just for the pastor and his family. And it was kind of a new thing. Nobody really done that in Baptist life. And so I said, listen, I just want you to come in and lead it, design it, put it together. Let's make an impact in the lives of pastors. Pastors are our heroes. And so I started thinking about that. And to be honest with you, I couldn't think of my life without being at Eagles Landing. I was 28. And when this started, I was 58. So I'm about to be 59 this month. And so you talk 30 years, I'm like, that's my whole adult life, basically. I don't remember a time I wasn't serving at Eagles Landing. And I had such a love for the people. And so what some of my requirements was, one, I didn't want to move, even though I'm driving up here. When I do come, it's 55 miles. So that's a long way. But I'd rather drive and stay engaged in our community and help our church stay engaged in the community around the world with the gospel of Jesus than to just unplug and move somewhere else. And then the other thing, I felt a great responsibility to the Lord and to his church to help lead that transition. And because so many times after somebody's been there a long time, and they don't even have to be, they've just been there a long time, sat in that seat leading the ministry. Whoever comes in next, he can just be a disaster. Like they're the sacrificial lamb. They're going to be there a couple years, then they're out, And I didn't want that to happen. I wanted to be a good transition, wanted to help it. And I felt like after being the lead pastor there for so long, man, I know what it takes. Mm-hmm. I know what that looks like. I've known every single day of my life as pastor there. It's not my church, it's God's church. He didn't need me to do it. He just given me the opportunity to be a part of what he's doing in the world. And he hasn't blessed the church because of me. Oftentimes he's blessed it in spite of me. He's let us do some bad decisions I've made along the way. And give me guidance so that I'd make some good decisions in the mix and we could actually do something effectively. But so I wanted to be a help to the next guy. And so met with our leadership team, met with our deacons. We talked about it. They were very open to the idea of a slow transition. So I've just been there still preaching while the search went on. And then, once they found the person they wanted to present to the congregation, they presented him, preached him via a call. COVID-19 kind of interrupted our transition plan a little bit, but he's finally now here on the field. And so we'll just share responsibilities over the next several months. And my hope is that as we get back to a semi-normal life as a church, we can just walk together, because there are a lot of things that happen that now, because I've been there so long, I just do intuitively. I couldn't make you a list. It just happens, and there's reasons why we do this and do that, but it's just going to be through life that he's going to discover that and see and have a question.
Right.
And so we just want to walk together for a while and then slowly pass the baton, and then he can lead us to some greater heights and new days and greater effective ministry. But then I can still be there, just a part of the church, to be a support to him and encourage the congregation to support him as well. And so I'm excited about that.
And that way you don't have to, reslice the bread. I mean, you've already done that, and it
Yeah.
helps. You don't have to make some of the mistakes by just giving it to him and say, bye bye, I'm out of here, which I think that is great. And I love how you phrased it, that you would work side by side and then pass the baton, as you say it, to him, which I think
Yeah.
is a great
Yeah.
thing. My wife, when we heard this, because I've seen churches where the former pastor has stayed as a member, because you're still going to be a member there. You're going to attend there.
Mm.
Your wife, Christy,
Yeah.
she's still going to teach class and do all those type
Yeah.
of things. I've seen that work great, and I've seen it be terrible. My wife, Donna, said, it's great as long as Pastor Tim will be like what former presidents should be and keep their mouth shut. That's what she said. In other words, let the new guy, once you pass it on, let him do what he's going to do. I was down in Orlando at a large Hispanic church. They run about 5,000 on Sunday, and I met the new guy who was the associate pastor, young, and the pastor's, he's about to take it over, and he said, and the pastor's going to stay there, and he said, yeah, I tell my former pastor, when you do that, why don't you, go on a sabbatical, go write a book, go preach somewhere, that type of thing. So that's because you're going to have some people are going to, I don't care who the person is, they could be the fourth in the Godhead, the new guy, and somebody's not going to like it and approach you and say, Pastor Tim, why is this guy, how are you going to approach that kind of thing?
Well, the bottom line is love your pastor, follow your pastor. And that I just hope to be an example of that, in this new season of life for me and a new season of life for him. And, the future doesn't need to look the same as the past. The day is different, the opportunities are different, and he needs to have the freedom to lead. And I want to give him that, and I want to certainly support him in doing that. Probably some of the same people that struggle with some of the decisions I made will struggle with some of the decisions that he made, and they'll come over to me to try to get me on their team to support that. That's not going to happen. I mean, it's just not going to happen. I know what it takes to sit in that seat and lead well, and I know it too well to be anything but an encourager to him. And so it's going to be a good time. I think It's going to be a great transition time. Our church has done wonderfully through it, I think, even with all the oddities of it with COVID-19. And I look forward to us all getting back together so we can actually celebrate his coming and his family being here too, and getting engaged in the church and the community. So,
and people need to understand that, pastors are people; they're human.
Yeah,
and you're gonna make decisions. I mean, there's decisions. I mean, there's times and I've told this publicly to people, and I've told you this before. There's times that my wife and I are sitting in church, and we got the Bible, we're listening to your sermon, and are you might. And this is what I love about you, Pastor Tim, is biblically you have never wavered. I have never had an issue with the preaching and the Bible part, because it's been consistent and stayed very scripturally based, and you don't waver either way on that. And that's awesome, because that's what I tell folks: you need to get into a Bible believing, Bible teaching church and be committed. Now, there's other things that you will do, and I'll tell Donna, what's Pastor Tim doing that for? That's stupid, that's weird. Why is he doing that? I wouldn't do that, but that's you as a leader. You want to do it. And sometimes it works out. And I tell Donna, I said, well, have to admit he was right about that. And other times it wouldn't work out, and say, I told him so, it wasn't going to work, and that's just the way it is. But people, I tell folks all the time, when you find a good church that preaches the Bible and loves people, loves God, loves people, and is ministering people, don't ever put your trust in the pastor or the worship pastor or the music guy or the youth guy, because they're people. They're going to do something sometime that's going to disappoint you. And people leave over stuff like that and get mad. I would have left 10 times if I'd have gotten mad over some little things, but I don't do that. As long as they're preaching the word, that's where we got to encourage folks. When you find a good home church where the people are preaching the Bible, keep your eyes on Jesus, because he's the one that's not going to change.
You're exactly right. And the one thing that should never waver is our focus on the Scripture. The only thing we really have to say that's worth listening to is what God teaches us in His Word. Our illustrations and stories and all those things, I mean, those are a lot of times they're real life stories in the lives of people. They're meaningful and powerful and move the hearts of people. But the only thing that transforms lives is the power of God's Word. And so the only thing we really have to say that's of any value is what God says in His Word.
Right.
And so we've got to be faithful in preaching that. At the same time, in your church, I think you've got to give your staff um, the freedom to fail. And that's one thing our church has done the whole time I've been there, from when we were really small and young and trying things. We weren't afraid to try something if it wasn't immoral, didn't break any principle or teaching of Scripture, supported the gospel, tried to help us engage our community with the gospel. Our people would be willing, let's try it. And if it failed, then I had the freedom to get up and say, listen, that was my idea. It stunk. It didn't work. And we would, have a funeral, bury it. We wouldn't just keep doing it for the next 30 years because we started it and we had to do it now. We would bury it and do something else, do something different. And so that our people have been real gracious. They didn't expect perfection. I'm not perfect. None of our staff's perfect. And we may try something that may work wonderful. We may try something else and it just miserably fail. But in both of those cases, our church loved me and our family through it. Now, obviously, some people get their feelings hurt if a program changed or something else was done differently that they didn't agree with. And sometimes people leave. And you have to be willing as a leader, too, in the midst of that. You either are firmly convinced that what you're about to do is going to help engage the community with the gospel and move the church forward, or you're not. And if you are convinced that that's the case, then you have to take the good with the bad. And sometimes the bad is that some people in your church said, I've had people call me and say, Pastor Tim, love you, love the church, but the church is just too evangelistic. And I've honestly asked people when they're telling me this, they're going to change churches. I'm like, let me ask you a question. Do you really think what you just said is possible? Is it possible for a church to be too evangelistic?
Right.
Lost as the world is, can we be too evangelistic? And does it hurt your feelings? Yeah. When somebody says, hey, we're bailing, we're going somewhere else. Yeah, it hurts your feelings. And you pray they're following God's leadership and God's direction, and God will use them in their church home and engage them there, and they'll be engaging the world with the gospel. But it's still tough. But you as a leader, you've got to have. I know somebody prayed for me when I think I was 25 years old on mission trips. My first mission trip went to India. That's probably not the first place to go on your first mission trip.
Right, exactly.
But I remember I was praying, and a friend of mine, Ron Harrod, he prayed for me. He said, God, give him the skin of a rhinoceros and the heart of a dove. And I was like, the skin of a rhinoceros? Why in the world do I need the skin of a rhinoceros? I remember asking him later. He said, I'll call me in a few years. You'll know why I prayed that. And after a few years pastoring, I was like, okay, I get it. I get exactly. You got to have tough hide,
That's right. That's right. And anybody in any position of any type, the bigger you get and the things that happen, you're going to have those things come. And Jerry Falwell used to say, if the devil's not bothering you, you're probably not doing anything for God. The more you start living for Jesus, the more the devil's going to throw, because he doesn't like it. And he's going to throw stuff at you. And he uses, sometimes the devil is doing that through some people in churches. Last two things before we go. Give us a tip for pastors, and then maybe a little funny story too.
If I think about one thing to say to any pastor, wherever you're serving, is just be faithful one day at a time. I mean, sometimes we've got to think ahead. We got to plan ahead. And, when I started ministry, I'd go to these conferences and I'd hear these guys get up and here's the 10 keys to success. Here are the 3 steps to having a larger church. Here's the 8 things you've got to do in order to make your church great. And I would think, man, these guys are phenomenal. I mean, they've got it all figured out. They've got everything figured out. And I don't know dirt. I mean, I know nothing. I just think there is no way that God's going to use me. I'd hear him preach at a convention, and I would think, didn't stumble over one word. Man, quoted, I just knocked it out of the park. Just so powerful and moving and rich. And I was thinking, man, God's not going to be able to use me. I mean, it's not going to happen. And, I guess one thing I've learned along the way is God made you. He's called you. He's equipping you. You stay faithful in your personal walk with him, and then faithful in the ministry that God's given you, just one day at a time. He'll make the most of your life. I mean, you don't have to dream something up. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to be the smartest guy in the room. You don't have to be the most gifted person on the planet. If you have a Christ-like character and a walk with Jesus, and a determination to be faithful in the task of pastoring your church, God will use you for the glory of his name. And whether anybody ever knows that or not, doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, the well done, good and faithful servant will come. And you can find encouragement in that. I think that's just a blessing.
Yes. You said something in the message Sunday, this past Sunday, that I
Yeah.
thought was very appropriate. We're not here on this earth to make our name great, but to make his name known. I love that
Yeah,
quote.
I was I was doing a study. I don't remember what it was on several years ago, and I'm one of those people when I study. A lot of times I'll end up studying the same thing over and over again. Like I've been reading every day, 3, 4, 5, 6 times a day, Philippians since January. I mean, we're in May. Okay, I'm still doing it. It's 104 verses. Doesn't take long. You'd think, okay, you got it by now, but I still do it. And I do that principally a month at a time. But in this season of time, when there's such an odd season, I just felt like I need to stay with this. And what I find is over time, God just starts ruminating things in my heart. It's like your heart begins to percolate with God's word, and you start paying attention to little nuances of what he's teaching, what he's saying that you didn't get early on. And I was doing one of those studies one time, and at the end of it, I was just sitting asking myself, okay, God, what are you saying to me? And it was all about the motive for why you do what you do. And it's like God just hammered my heart with this. You want to judge your motive? You don't need anybody else to hold you accountable. If you're living to make your name great rather than make your name known, you got the wrong motive. And so that's what came out of that. I just wrote that down. Don't live to make your name great. Live to make his name known.
Amen.
I found even in Christian circles sometimes in all the conferences, and man, we get so caught up in trying to publicize ourselves and make ourselves sound smarter than we are and more important than we are and all that. And it's like, okay, what are we really living for here?
Yeah.
Are we living to make Jesus known, or are we living to make ourselves known? And I think we all have to ask ourselves those questions over and over again. And think about when Paul was writing to the church of Philippi, he was talking about Timothy, and he said, I have no one like him. I'm thinking about all the Christian people he was surrounded by and had known in his life. And he makes this statement, I have no one like him. It lets us know. And the reason no one was like him, because he was genuinely concerned for the interests of others. He said everybody else seeks their own interests over those of Jesus Christ. I thought that's a warning to all of us. The flesh,
absolutely,
man, can get a hold of any of us so quickly. We have to guard our heart so that our motives are pure and right, and we're really seeking to make him known, not to make us great.
And anybody in public eye, secular or Christian or whatever, can be tempted to that. Listen, I've been in that. I've done things out of my own power to make, Scott Davis more known or whatever. And then I think, why has nothing happened to this? Because God's like, you ain't got it about me. That's why. And that's true. And I have had to confess that. And like you said, where Jesus leads, we follow. It's making his name known. How is this going to impact somebody for eternity? That's the bottom line. Anyway, I just think that's a great, great quote. We're not here to make our name great, but to make his name known. So do you have any funny story to leave us with?
Hey, I'll tell you a story. I got 30 years of stories, and but I'll tell you one quick one. Early in the ministry, I was pastoring at Flat Top Unity Baptist Church outside of Picayune, Mississippi. Okay, this is my first church pastoring, and my wife and I we were at New Orleans. We'd lived there on the weekends. We lived in a Sunday school room. They put a shower, one of those modular shower units, in a closet in the fellowship hall. And so we lived in the Sunday school room on the weekends, and we'd stay there, get the church ready for Sundays and all that. And I remember a church showed up to listen to me preach. They were without a pastor. They were thinking about calling me as pastor. I didn't know they were coming, but we only had 25. Well, they pull into the parking lot in their church van. Okay, first off, it's like, okay, well that's really good. Everybody knows you're here now. They come in the church and they sit down, all 6 of them on one row. So we got 25 people in this auditorium that can hold probably, maybe 100 people if we all packed them in there good. Well, they all 6 sit on one row, and we got 20 other people scattered around the room And so we stand up to sing the first song, and they all reach up to the pew in front of them to pull themselves up like we all would,
Right, right.
to stand up. The only thing was our pews were not screwed to the ground. So when they pulled on the pew, it came back over on them. They fell back. That pew flipped over, and they were all laying on the ground. We had to stop the service, go help them all up, the ladies, the guys, and everything.
You should have done an invitation right there if you were to die today.
Yeah. Needless to say, they did not invite me to come preach in Beautiful Call at their church. It was like, the day is really over at that point.
So how do you, as a pastor, how do you leave after something like that? You just.
I don't remember what we did, but I know this. I remember thinking it's really useless for me to preach at this point. Everyone's thinking about what just happened and what we had to stop the service to do.
Right.
But we had all kinds of things in that church happen like that. German Shepherd came through the service, walking right down the center of the aisle while I was preaching. Had a kid one time that was remember those little rubber band guns?
Oh yeah, sure.
And have a little paper. A clothespin.
Right.
You put it and I'm preaching away, and this grandmother brought her granddaughter. She brought her rubber band gun, and she must have had a pocket full of rubber bands. The entire time I'm preaching, she's under the second pew, firing, and I'm dodging while I'm preaching. I was like, Rambo up here trying to dodge and stay alive during the sermon.
Let's hope your message is about avoiding the fiery darts of the devil.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Oh man.
Oh.
But, people are funny. You don't really have to look for things.
No.
Just people are funny.
Life,
it happens. And
you could take a lot of people say, where do you come? Where you here? It's never one line, stand-up comedy jokes. It's life. You got to look at life. If you look at it long enough, it's going to be some funny stories out there. So
I tell you, one of the crazy things at Eagles Landing when we first got there, we had a building that we had there was no grass. There was no shrubs around the building. It looked terrible. It looked terrible. So here's one of my bad ideas. We didn't have any money, so I said, okay, here's the deal. Everybody go buy one or two of their favorite plants, and we'll come up Saturday, and we'll just plant them around the church. And so there was two problems with that idea. One, a lot of people like ugly things, really ugly plants. Really ugly plants. And then everybody wanted to plant their plant right by the front door.
Oh, everybody wanted this front spot. I got you.
Oh, yeah. So we had this conglomeration of ugly plants all planted around the front of the building. The rest of it was bare. It was the worst thing. And then, of course, what do? You can't tell people, well, we don't like your plant. We're taking that one out. That's ugly.
Right.
So we had to punt. Eventually, we just got a landscape architect design it, and then you pick up the plant you want to buy and give us the money. We'll go buy it. And we'll plant them where they need to be planted. But it was like, I remember pulling up that Sunday after we had that Saturday work day and looked. I said, Lord, it looked better with no grass and no plants. This looks terrible.
Here, I brought my poison ivy.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I know you're busy. Is there a way, if a church is watching this, since you have this new position, I know it's for Georgia, but we have some pastors around the country watching. Is there a way for people to contact? Of course, I'll add this too to the comments below, and I'll add it at the top and everything. Is there a way for people to call your office to get, if they just, man, I need somebody to talk to, I need some help?
Well, and absolutely, we'd help. We want to help pastors, wherever they are.
Right.
And email wise, it's tdowdy@gabaptist.org. I wish I knew my work number, but I don't know what it is yet. And I'll give it to you, Scott, and we can put it up on the screen so guys can call.
Right.
Help encourage pastors around the country, and any way that we can, we want to help the church and help the pastor and his family. In fact, that's when you think about, so what is our purpose? We are for the pastor and his family. Your whole life.
Right.
So that you will live well and lead well. That's what we want to help you do.
And there are pastors out there going through, people are coming to them with their problems and issues, and they're counseling and talking to them. but who's the pastor go to? That they can put their trust in.
Exactly.
And I think that's one of the positions, one of the job descriptions I think that would entail your new position there at the convention is that.
Yeah, and it's not always a crisis, Scott. Like it's not like you got to wait for something bad to happen and
right.
then you need pastor wellness. It's like, I mean, I'm talked to a guy the other day. He said, "Listen, our church is at 300. I've never pastored a church of 300.
Right.
I don't even know what to do from here. What do we do? What's the next step? What I need to think about?" And so just having a conversation to help him think through his next steps. Man, that's been awesome.
My list would be nail down your pews, don't plant plants. That's a lot of stuff I would say.
I can tell you a lot of what not to do.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah.
But that's awesome. So we'll put the email address, and if you can text me the phone number, we'll add that too for anybody.
Okay.
And we have a lot. Listen, I know it's the Georgia Baptist Convention, but we believe in the local church. I go to all kind of churches. As long as you're a church that loves Jesus and is preaching the gospel, that's the main thing. But thank you so much for this time. This has been fun, and I'm excited to see what God's got on the other side of this coronavirus. And we're
Me
just
too.
Keep living for Jesus, as you would say. That's what you say at the end of every service, which is great. So,
well, Scott, listen, man, I appreciate your friendship. We've been friends a long time. You think about all the things that have gone on in our lives that we've shared over 30 years. Pretty amazing to see what God's done, and I'm grateful for that. But I'm always, when I think about my life and think about the investments that God has made in me, one of the things He has made in my life that have been a blessing are the friends that He's given me.
Yes.
Just good friends that, you can share anything with, you can lean on, depend on, they can depend on you. It's just, it's you don't have to worry about trying to impress them.
That's right.
And it's that's a blessing to have.
Yep.
And so I'm thankful for you, thankful for your faithfulness to the gospel, making people laugh, sharing with them the hope of Jesus. And that's one thing that I've loved about your whole ministry, no matter whether it's been singing or comedy or whatever's going on, your desire has always been, let me get the gospel. There's only one hope, and the hope is Jesus. I want to get that out in every venue, every opportunity that we have. And so I appreciate that so much.
Well,
it's been a blessing.
Thank you for that. And I appreciate your faithfulness to preach the word every week. So thank you for that. And looking forward to, maybe we can schedule a time with the new pastor and Trey Brinson, by the way, is his name.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll see what it's like on the other side of this as coming in as a new guy. So, but thank you so much, and you have a great day. And when this comes out, share it with everybody.
All right, I'll do it.
Okay, my friend. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Scott.
Thank you, Pastor Tim. Wasn't that good? I really enjoyed my interview with Pastor Tim. So keep him in prayer as he is doing this new position. I do have, we're setting up an interview with Trey Brinson, the new pastor who's coming, which will be great because we'll get his perspective. You've got Pastor Tim leaving and starting a new ministry, and then you've got the new guy coming in and his perspective of all that. But I think Pastor Tim had some really great things for all of us. I just love that quote. We're not here to make our name great, but to make his name known. That is wonderful. And that's the bottom line, folks. We got to keep in the Word. So thank you for joining me today. Again, don't forget our Mother's Day special right here. Right. Let me see if I can wiggle this a little bit. Anyway, it's right here. See it? Mother's Day special. If you go to ScottDavis.com/shop, it's only $70. That helps us stay on the road. In this case, live off the road. And if you want to donate, you can right here, ScottDavis.com/donate or PayPal or Square Cash or Venmo. Any of those ways to help us. If you like this show and it'll help us do this during this whole quarantine time. So check that out and give if you can. I appreciate it. And I do want to throw this up here. Let's see if I can bring this in and show you this. All right, let me make this a little bit bigger so you can see it. Every Monday, so Monday, I'm going to be sending this out. This was last week's. I do a Monday Mood Changer radio show. It is nationwide. And it's also on Babby Mason Radio, too. So nationwide, but we send it out by email. So if you go to ScottDavis.com, please go there today. Go down to the bottom of the home page, and it says subscribe, and put in your email address. And Monday, you'll get the next Monday Mood Changer. It airs on radio stations. It airs here in Atlanta on 90.7, I think, and then 91.7, I think. Anyway, but check that out, and I'll email that to you. So thank you. Have a great day. And next week, Juan DeVivo with Casting Crowns. He's going to co-host with me. So be sure and tune in next Friday, noon. Thank you. Love you guys.